Welcome you to the meeting of the Plymouth Charter Commission, being held live here in the Great Hall. This meeting is hybrid, in person as well as via Zoom webinar, and can be viewed live on the local government channel 15 and 47. This meeting is being recorded. Zoom attendees must register using the Zoom webinar link on the Charter Commission page of the town website. Zoom attendees, for public comment, please use the raise hand icon on the lower portion of your screen. And members in the audience, for public comment, use the podium and place your name on the sign-in sheet. We will start tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Before we attend to the business tonight, I just want to say the agenda is set up so that we're going to have our discussion first for the running through the charters, and then we will turn to public comment and then do some of the regular business of the meeting to finish the evening. I do want to say one thing at the start of this meeting. At the end of the last meeting, one of our commissioners noted that there were two instances during the meeting when the back and forth between our panel and the audience got a bit out of hand. And let me say this on that. Every member of this commission tries to extend respect to each of you and a sincere interest in what you have to say. But this must be a two-way street, and we expect you to reciprocate in kind. Enough said. Mr. Pizer, did you want to?
Before I knew that the chair was going to make a comment, I made a short list of my own. I think it is most important that there not be attempted bullying of the commission for two reasons. One, this does not look like a group that's going to be easily bullied. And therefore, if someone has a point of view, we don't want to hear, do what we say or else. The second is, we keep hearing, you need to do what the people want. And believe me, we know that we want to do what the people want. The trick is figuring out what it is that the people want. Someone who has spoken to 50 or 100 or 200 people have spoken to a very minuscule subsection of Plymouth, 61,000 plus people. There has been one official survey taken of what the people want. It occurred last May, and it resulted in the election of 9 people, all of whom made their views clear. We are going to investigate. I think we have shown that we're interested in looking at a lot of possibilities and making a recommendation. And we shall. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment? So I'd like to turn to the business for the evening.
Mr. Chairman, point of order, sir. Point of order.
Mr. Lynch,
Yes,
What is your point of
in
order?
meetings, there's something called a point of order, and someone can call for it.
I asked you for your
That's
point of
what's
order.
exercised in town meeting. I'd like to be able to do it here.
What is your point of order, Mr.
Okay,
Lynch?
point of order. I would like to ask you to please allow public comment on the agenda to be moved from agenda item number 3 to agenda item number 2. It's a point of order, and I'd like a vote.
Does any member of the commission wish to make a motion to change the agenda that has been presented? Okay, we will now start. Thank you, Mr. Lynch. We're gonna
And dare I
continue.
say, ladies and gentlemen,
Mr. Lynch, you've
I'm
had your
disappointed.
turn.
Thank
You're
you
out of
very much.
order.
Appreciate
We're now going
it.
to start with our
Just-
agenda.
just trying to exercise my constitutional right. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for hearing me.
So the commissioners are reviewing many charters, probably approximately 30 charters. We took the larger population towns and distributed them among the members of the commission. And each of us have read several of these charters, and we're presenting them, some of the ideas in these charters, which we will later revisit when we come to draft the charter which we think fits Plymouth. So to date, we have already reviewed, and you can see the results are in the minutes, as well as notes on these charters have been posted in our website, and in many cases, the charters themselves. We've reviewed so far the charters of Arlington, Somerville, Greenfield, and Pittsfield, and Amherst, and Barnstable, and Watertown. So I'd like now to ask for commissioners to present the charters that you have reviewed. Should we start with Betsy? Betsy Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. I reviewed 3 charters. I'm going to take this off if my fellow commissioners don't mind. Because I just don't think I can be heard through this. I reviewed Dartmouth, Fall River, and Winchester. Before I speak to those 3 towns, I do want to let my fellow commissioners know, and perhaps there's a way that the audience can also know, that we received a video from the Sharon Stoughton League of Women Voters talking about different forms of government. And I did get a chance to watch it today, and do recommend anyone who wants to hear what those, I think there were like 7 panelists, had to say. I thought it was very well done. So if you haven't had a chance to see it, I think that I'm going to go back now. Certain towns were represented. I'm going to go back and look at their charters because it was very interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and do Dartmouth, Fall River, and Winchester. Did you want to say something, Mr. Abbott?
What are you asking?
I thought you were going to ask me a question. Okay, so I reviewed Dartmouth. One reason I remember. Do you want me to go through the 3 towns that I reviewed? Yes. Okay, so I reviewed Dartmouth. I grew up in Dartmouth. I have family still living in Dartmouth, and as well as Westport and Fairhaven. Their annual budget is $91,000. Their population is 34,000. They've updated their charter in 2000, 2007, 2015. They have a 5-member select board who are elected for 3-year terms, and they have 1 town administrator who's also elected for a 3-year term. It's a representative town meeting that has 390 members, so it's representative elected. 390 town meeting members are elected from 8 precincts, and they have 3-year terms. And Dartmouth has a fall and spring town meeting annually. One of the things of note that I thought was interesting was that their vacancies are filled in town meeting by election from the precinct members who are left. So they have 9 people in a precinct. If one person moves away, the remaining town meeting members elect the additional town meeting members, so there's never a vacancy. Excuse me? No, Plymouth takes the next highest vote getter. That's what it says in our charter, I believe. Yeah.
It's a hybrid. It's the next highest vote getter. If there is no next highest vote getter, then it goes to a vote of the rest of the caucus.
Yeah, so, okay, so I think that's a good thing that we're doing, and that's something that Dartmouth doesn't fill from the elected body. They fill directly with vacancies. They have a number of elected boards, not only the planning board, which is a 5-year term, but they have a Board of Library Trustees at a 3-year term. Board of Assessors are elected for a 3-year term. The Board of Health is elected for a 1-year term. The Board of Parks and Recreation is elected for a 3-year term. The Dartmouth Housing Authority is elected for a 5-year term. And the Dartmouth Historical Commission is elected for a 3-year term. Their town clerk is also elected, and that's for a 3-year term, as well as the town moderator. And he's elected, or she's elected for a 3-year term. They have a split tax rate, and their residential taxes right now are, last I could read, were 9.99, and commercial was 17.6. And like our town, we had a ruling that the town moderator could, the town meeting could question the town moderator. We recently changed that in 2018, and they have that as well, that a moderator ruling can be overruled. I think one difference, if I understand our charter correctly, is that we can overrule a point of order. But in Dartmouth, from what I'm reading, it says any ruling made by the town moderator can be overturned. Because I copied it out of the charter. It says, rulings made by the town moderator may be appealed to the representative town meeting by a motion to do so, which shall be put to the meeting by the moderator in the form of, shall the ruling of the moderator be reversed, and a majority vote shall be required to reverse the ruling of the moderator. So that's something that's a little bit different. I also reviewed Winchester. That's a population of 21,000. Their annual budget is 134,000 million. I'm sorry, 134 million. And I found that interesting. You can get on the internet and find the population and the budget of every town and city in Massachusetts, and I was astounded at the variation. I mean, it's just an amazing difference. A small town might have a huge budget, a huge town might have a small budget. And if you notice, Winchester has 21,000 people with an annual budget of 134 million, but Dartmouth has 34,000, 13,000 more, but their annual budget is only 91 million. So big variations between towns. And in this League of Women Voters video, that was something that was constantly stressed, was how different every single town is from every other town. Just huge differences, even if it's, quote, the same form of government, town manager council or mayor council or town meeting representative, just enormous difference, even towns that are right next door to each other. So I found that fascinating that different towns have chosen different ways to approach their form of government. So they have an executive branch in Winchester. The 5-member select board is elected for 3-year terms, and they have one town manager that has no term limit. The representative town meeting, now this is a town with 21,000 people, they have 192 members elected from 8 precincts for 3-year terms, and they have fall and spring town meeting annually. They have quite a limit on debate. Unless granted an extension of time by the vote of the meeting, an individual speaking as initial proponent on a main motion shall not speak for more than 10 minutes. Subsequently, anyone may not speak more than 5 minutes, but no one can receive more than one extension, and extensions all have to be voted. But when a motion has been laid on the table, no more than 10 minutes shall be allowed for debate, and no person shall speak for more than 3 minutes. So they're quite specific on how long who can speak during a debate and how long they can speak. And again, their vacancies are filled by town meeting members voting. There's nothing about going to who was elected. They also have establishment of standing committees. Town meeting may from time to time by bylaw establish standing committees to which shall be referred warrant articles for study, review, and report in advance of the sessions of town meeting. And I think that's an interesting thing to consider if there's a particular type of, if we continue with a representative form of town meeting, that we can actually establish a committee that would study various types of articles and report back. So that's a standing committee that Winchester, and I couldn't see online the names of their standing committees, but that might be something that we could find out. What standing committees have they? So they study, they review, and they report in advance of the sessions of town meeting. So I'm not sure exactly how they do that, but, so they must maybe send out emails or something, letting people know the results of their studies. So these are standing committees. Winchester also has 5 elected members to their school committee, and again, they have quite a few elected boards. And I think that I copied that wrong. So then we have Fall River. Fall River has 88,857 people, and they have an annual budget of $327 million. 600 and $754 million. So they have a very large annual budget. And the mayor's office is an extremely strong mayor's office. The mayor appoints everybody, and he's also chairman of the school committee. So it says the mayor fulfills political, ceremonial, and community leadership and executive functions while serving also as the chairman of the school committee. He oversees all city department heads and therefore day-to-day functions of the city's government. He responds directly to members of the public seeking information, and he addresses concerns regarding municipal government services. But on top of that, they also have like a town manager. They call him the city the city administrator, and they perform the day-to-day oversight of city departments and make best efforts to provide municipal services in an efficient and cost-effective manner. So underneath that, they have a chief of staff. And this chief of staff to the mayor supports the mayor. He does, or she, planning, directing, coordinating, and evaluating of the overall operation of the mayor's office. And then on top of that, there are elected city councilors. There are 9 members in the council, and they're elected for two-year terms. The school committee has 6 members plus the mayor. And they do receive a salary and expense compensation. They're elected for 2 terms. Fall River also has a split tax. Their residential is 13.83 compared to commercial 29.7. And I forgot to, Winchester does not have a split tax. I mean, it's like 12.83 to 12.24. So it's, it's very close between commercial. So again, huge differences between towns, even between split, whether it's split tax or whether it's not split. So that's what I have to say about those 3 charters. I didn't see anything else that jumped out at me from those 3 towns.
Thank you, Betsy. I appreciate you've done notes for this. The notes will be posted on our website. And there are also, members of the commission are encouraged to circle things in the notes or in the excerpts from the notes that Michelle is going to produce. Circle items that you think we should attend to and not forget months from now when we're actually doing some drafting. Now, Betsy, one thing, the town moderator, the provision here that about rulings made by the moderator may be appealed to town meeting,
Yes.
that's similar to what we have in our charter, except I think we stated point of order.
Just point of order, that's right,
Right.
yeah, that's just point of order. Also, I'm going to send out another copy of this, because I can see that I made a mistake under Winchester. So I'm going to send out another copy that's with that corrected. So I'll send that to Michelle.
So did
and
you
then
do Fall
Michelle.
River, too?
Under Winchester, I included Dartmouth Historical Commission, which is wrong. So I've got to make a change on that, and then I'll send the new changed copy to Michelle, and she can get it to everyone.
And then we'll come back to Fall River.
And you want to talk about Fall River now?
Okay. Mr. Melgudi.
A couple of things. I just want to say one thing, because I can just envision as this goes out over the airwaves. Residential rate 9.99 in Dartmouth, and commercial 17.6. And I just want to make it clear, having sat for many years on the Board of Selectmen, We have, I believe, somewhere around 17,000 residences. We have less than 1,000 businesses. So any split to give a benefit to the homeowner would tax the businesses so exorbitantly that it would be detrimental to the growth that we're trying to see. So every town is different, and we happen to be very, very, very high in residential, very, very low in commercial. So when you switch things around and try to give the houses a break, man, you zonk the businesses. So having said that, Mr. Chairman, that was my little tirade for the moment. Let me do my 3 charters.
David?
I would like to respond to what David said, if that's okay. I'm not recommending a split tax at all. I simply wanted people to know
Yeah.
how the towns were different.
Right.
You know, that's all. I'm not making any recommendations.
So, before we leave Betsy's things, in Dartmouth, I did the arithmetic, and 390 does not divide evenly into 8 precincts. So I'm curious how they, curious and likewise in the Fall River Council, is that our Summit, district and some at large in terms of how it works?
I can look that up.
Okay, yeah, I'd just like to understand that, because Winchester was an even 24 people per precinct.
I can check that out. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Larry?
Betsy, could you say again Fall River's annual budget?
According to what I saw online, it was 327 million, well, 327, 600,754.
I misheard, I feel much better.
Thank you. Any other questions of Betsy? Okay, David, go ahead.
Thank you. I did Framingham, Weymouth, both of those are mayor, and I did Chelsea, which is council manager. Common to all 3, elections are held in November of odd-numbered years. Framingham and Weymouth specify nonpartisan, Chelsea does not. I don't know how you increase the vote on an odd-numbered year. We've been hearing that we need to increase the vote. Maybe we can tie in with the local, the state and the federal elections. None of these do. All 3 have district councilors and at-large councilors. All receive stipends. All give councilors 2-year terms. All 3 forbid any other employment by the city, and they are not eligible for employment until 1 year after their term ends. All 3 charters require regular meetings, but the times vary. All 3 specifically forbid interference by councilors in administrative actions. Mayors/managers are solely responsible for administration. First one was Framingham. That's a mayor-council. 9 district councilors, 2 at-large. Their charter further specifies no councilor can interfere by giving orders to municipal officers or employees publicly or privately. A majority vote of the council is required for ordinances. A 2/3 majority is required for zoning. The council appoints an auditor, which, from what I can see, is a sort of a town council, a city clerk, and a council secretary. The council reviews and can reject mayoral appointments. The council at large vacancies within the first 16 months of their 2-year term. A vacancy then requires a special election. A district councilor, if a vacancy occurs within the first 20 months, they're filled by the next highest vote getter. The mayor, only the mayor can participate in benefits, no benefits for the councilors. Any registered voter can be a mayor, and no training, and when I get to Chelsea, you'll see why I'm saying this, but must devote full-time to the office. No other job is allowed, no other employment is allowed. 4-year term, limit of 3 consecutive 4-year terms, that's 12 years, and that's my basis for my recommendation for term limits. I think you need about a 12-year period. After that, probably it's time to move on. The salary is set by 2/3 vote of the council. The mayor appoints all personnel except school committee appointments and also all committees, boards, and commissions. So what Betsy said holds true here. This is also a very strong mayor. The mayor has veto power over the council, but can be overridden by a 2/3 vote of the full council. The council chair can be the acting mayor if need be. Any vacancy in the mayor's office requires a special election. The mayor is responsible for the budget, the master plan, and a long-range strategic plan. The charter has extensive ethics regulations and pretty rigorous recall provisions. Now, for an example, the adoption of this charter, 2016/2017, the salaries were set initially as follows. The mayor, the same as the previous town manager. The councilors/school committee members, $5,000 annually. Council school committee chairs, $7,500 annually. And the charter is to be reviewed in every year ending in 3. Now, when we go to Weymouth, mayor council, fairly strong, but not quite as strong as Framingham. 6 district councilors, 5 at large. Again, the charter specifies council shall not interfere in administrative matters. Council appoints the same officers, an auditor, a town clerk, and a clerk of council. Councilors receive a salary and have 2-year terms. I could find no mention of term limits. Vacancies are filled by the candidate with the next highest vote. The mayor, same as Framingham. Any registered voter shall be eligible, so forth and so on. 4-year term, again, can't find any mention of term limits. The council determines the mayor's salary. The mayor directs and supervises all town agencies unless otherwise provided by the law, the Weymouth Charter, or an ordinance. The mayor is the ex officio member of every other multiple member body of the town, but he doesn't have a vote. Mayoral appointments are reviewed by the council, and they are indefinite in length. The mayor has veto power over the council, but he can be overridden by 2/3 vote, again, of the full council. Council president can be acting mayor. Any mayoral vacancy in the first 3 years requires a special election. If it happens in the 4th year, the council president becomes the mayor. Same as Framingham, all executive and administrative powers are vested solely in the mayor, no interference from the council. The mayor submits the budget and is responsible for the capital improvement plan. Again, pretty extensive ethics requirements. Again, pretty rigorous recall procedure. And charter and ordinances are reviewed every 5 years. Now we're at Chelsea, and that is a council/manager, 8 district councilors, 3 at large. Again, specifically, council is legislative, all administrative powers are with the manager, no interference. Council is required, in this charter, they're required to meet once a month, except July and August. So that gives them the summer off. Councilors have 2-year terms, no mention in this charter of term limits. Councilors set their salaries, but only for the next term. So if the council sets a raise in the salaries this year, it doesn't happen until the next term. They're not eligible for any benefits, and this is a strange one, except they can participate in the retirement system. I guess that's why they don't have term limits. Vacancies are filled by the next highest vote getter, and there are some caveats. There are some time periods that, if it's within the last 4 or 5 months, they operate one person short, whatever. All laws, appropriations, and loan authorizations require a roll call vote and a second meeting before voting. So if you have one of these 3 things, laws, appropriations, loan authorizations, you discuss it, but you can't vote it till the next meeting. Unless it's an emergency and they have an extensive description of what constitutes an emergency. The manager, it requires 7 out of the 11 councilors to hire or fire the manager. The manager is totally responsible for implementing all council actions. And here's the key on the training. I told you I was going to get back to this. The manager must have proven administrative ability, either by education, by training, or 5 years prior experience. The manager must establish residency within 12 months unless it's waived by the council. The manager appoints all officers and employees except schools and all multi-member bodies, with the council having veto power. The council sets its own salary and also reviews, typo here. Council sets the salary and reviews the manager's performance annually. The joint meeting of the council and the school committee forms the annual budget information, which is then given to the manager, and I guess input at that point from him, and also he must submit the budget. I don't know, that was not clear in the charter. But it takes a joint meeting of the council and the school committee to form the budget. The manager prepares a capital improvement plan and a long-range revenue and expense plan. The council provides an annual audit prepared by a qualified CPA. The council also appoints a 5-member licensing authority, and it is made up of 4 citizens and the Director of Inspectional Services. Initiatives and referendums require a minimum of 30% of the registered voters for passage. Now, Chelsea's charter, contrary to the others, does not have a lot of mention of ethics. I guess they assume everybody's up to snuff. There are rigorous recall provisions in this charter also, and this charter must be reviewed in all years ending in 0. I don't know why they just didn't say every 10 years, but they specify every year ending in 0. So that's what I have on those charters.
Thank you. Any, David?
Just kind of listening in, the question or two about Chelsea, but before that, many of these provisions sound very similar to the council manager language I saw in the 3 I reviewed. I mean, almost word for word, so that's interesting. But anyway, how big is Chelsea? How big, population, and how big is their budget? Okay, yeah, it'd just be interesting to see that, so, thank you.
Okay, others? Betsy?
I guess they put more in their ethics in the charter then.
And so I just looked it up real quickly, it mentioned the names of some of the mayors.
Please make sure your microphone is turned on.
And so then I went.
Betsy, can you turn your mic on?
I'm sorry, thank you very much. Because I had a little bit of familiarity with Chelsea, I went to the Chelsea website, and it says, why doesn't the city have a mayor? And it says that a citizens committee wrote a new charter in 1991 that was approved by the voters of the city by a margin of 60% to 40%, which deleted any mayor, and they went to town manager, city council. And they did this because, they had had such a bad experience. It said, and it ends, this is on their website, it says, thus the idea of anyone titled mayor was abandoned. I think that it's a situation in which citizens did get together, did take charge and say, we can't put up with this any longer. Because they had had a mayor from, I think it said 1903 to 1991. So they had had a mayor for a long, long time. And unfortunately, it didn't work out, so they changed their form of government. So
Thank you.
I didn't know if you knew that.
Mr. Pfizer?
I got one part, David. It's 40,000. I don't have the,
I was going to say, that they must be one of the densest cities in the world, because, Chelsea has a tiny footprint, 40,000 people? Wow.
Okay, other charters? Mr. Pfizer?
I did 2 cities. I also did one town which I haven't reported on. This is the town of Maine. Just, excuse me, hit the high points. Natick has a population of about 36,000, so 60% of the size of the town of Plymouth. 180 towns.
Please make sure your microphone is turned on.
Sorry. They tend to elect people. They still have an elected assessor. They have an elected Board of Health. They have an elected Parks Commission. So I think that this kind of brings up the question that we'll have to face of who should or shouldn't be elected. Do we have too many elected right now? Do we have too few? They have a preliminary election, similar to what we all saw in the city of Boston last Tuesday. The number of people running for office put in their papers, and it's pared down to twice the size of the office. They have a...
Larry, if I could just interject, when are those elections? When are the preliminary town meeting?
It's
In the spring?
it's in the spring, yeah.
Okay.
The town meeting controls multiple member bodies. They actually report to town meeting. In the charter, it is quite clear that this is a town meeting centered form of government. And the moderator has extraordinary power. Power somewhat similar to some of the mayors that we talked about. But the most interesting parts were the idea of the preliminary election preceding the general election, and the fact that, I'll give you a history lesson for Plymouth. We used to have elected constables in the 17th century, which was a source of income for someone who was willing to do it, because most people didn't want to serve as constables. But these people have elected just all sorts of bodies that we gave up on in the past.
Larry, what's the interval between the preliminary and the final election?
I would have to check. I think it's 5 weeks.
5 weeks. Thank you. Other charters. I just want to add to the Bill Ricca charter, which I reported on already in the notes or on the website, but the one provision, I did mention it, but it didn't make the minutes, and I think it's important, had to do with the Board of Selectmen in Bill Ricca, which is a town of about 40,000 people. It looks like they were having trouble with their Board of Selectmen in getting them to concentrate on big stuff. So they actually amended their charter to add a provision which reads with a few, I'm just abbreviating it a bit, but reads basically, the Board of Selectmen shall serve as the chief policy-making agency of the town, responsible for the issuance of policy directives and guidelines to be followed by all town agencies serving under it, provided, however, that no individual member of the Board of Selectmen, not a majority of them, shall at any time attempt to become involved in the day-to-day administration of the affairs of the town. So it's basically a warning and a directive to the selectmen to focus on big policy items and not get involved in the nitty-gritty of running the town. And it goes on to say, it's the intention of this provision that the Board of Selectmen shall act only through the adoption of policy directives and guidelines, which are then to be implemented by officers and employees appointed by or under its authority. So it's interesting how they went almost overboard in telling the Board of Selectmen what they should do, but more importantly, what they shouldn't be doing. Another town that I reviewed was Shrewsbury, which is a fairly large town of about 36,000. And it has a completely different approach from any of the other towns that I've reviewed. It doesn't have a charter. What it did in 1953 was adopt two special acts from the legislature. One was for town meeting, and the other was for the town manager. And these are special acts passed by the legislature, and Shrewsbury adopted them, and then wrote a very comprehensive set of bylaws to carry out these two special acts. But one interesting thing that they've done in bylaws and the special act on town meeting is to control the size of their town meeting. Their town meeting members are 240, and that's a fixed number. And if you read their legal documents here, that's the most important thing that governs how they do all their precincting and everything else. They must end up with 240 town meeting members. So if a precinct's added, they reduce the number of town meeting members per precinct. So those of us in Plymouth that seem worried about adding precincts and adding town meeting members and becoming unmanageable, perfect way to do it is just limit the number of town meeting members, and if you add precincts, it'd be maybe 8 town meeting members or 7 town meeting members per precinct. And Bill Ricker, that's very important. So they've kept that number of 240 now for decades, and that's the way they do their redistricting. They also have a very interesting provision on town council. It's pretty elaborate, pretty descriptive as to what their town council should be doing. It specifically states in the charter that the town council must, whenever he's asked to give an opinion, he must give it and put it in writing. And then all of the cases that the town council has worked on during the year, those that have been litigated, those that have been settled, end up in a town report. So the town council is very much the beck and call of all the officers of the town, and it also reports to the townspeople. Again, it's got a lot of good stuff in there. It's got a good beef that we might think about when we describe the function of the town council in Plymouth. So this, by and large, is the Shrewsbury Charter is very, very detailed. You have 83 pages of bylaws that carry out these rather brief Town Manager Act and Town Meeting Act. But everything is covered, and it's in a lot of detail. Every single town officer's duties are specified very, very, very close. And the town is very much governed by what is in this basically it's about 112 pages of documents, and they have no intention of using the Home Rule Act of 1966 to do a charter. They're basically happy with what they adopted in 1953, and once in a while they amend it to add a provision here, a provision there, but Shrewsbury, it was very interesting to read, a completely different approach. So, Betsy.
I want to thank David for pointing out to me the numbers for representative town meeting for Dartmouth. And I'll read you what their charter says. It says the representative town meeting membership shall consist of 390 members who shall all be registered voters of the town and who shall be apportioned in precincts on the basis of population, with each precinct having, as near as possible, the same number of representative town meeting members as any other precinct. So I'm not sure where I read it was 8, but I read that someplace. But it says not more than 10, but not more than 4,000 in each precinct because of so they would have to change their charter. Here it is right here. It says they will divide the territory of the town into not more than 10 convenient voting precincts, each of which shall contain as nearly as possible an equal number of residents of the town, but not more than 4,000 inhabitants. So they're not, if it's not exact, they don't care about the division in Dartmouth. But the 390 is cast in concrete. The number of people in precinct is not.
I also should say the Shrewsbury Charter had another provision on the Finance Committee. I'm beginning to see this in many of these charters, that the Finance Committees deal with financial issues, financial warrant articles, the budget, but not everything else in the town meeting. I'd say that is more standard way of treating finance committees in the Arlington Charter than having the Finance Committee be the jack of all trades and reviewing all the articles. So I think that's one we maybe come back to. Any other additions at this point? Dave, Bill, go ahead.
Hello, thank you. So the charters that I was looking at was trying to find similarities to Plymouth, And that was what I was focused on, mostly just comparing and contrasting what similarities might exist. Falmouth is a town that is about half the size of Plymouth, but area-wise, it's another neighboring town of significant challenges that are similar to the ones that Plymouth has. So I saw the attributes of Falmouth and Plymouth similar, even though their population is half as big. I found that to be an interesting element to their charter. Was one of the things that I noticed throughout their charter, they have a lot of references to the planning process. This is the Cape, and Falmouth's under a lot of stress. So I see that the select board is required to meet with the planning board a couple of times a year, and every 5 years, they have to come up with a strategic plan. So there's a lot of references throughout their charter where they're referencing the responsibility of the Board of Selectmen and the planning board and the planning process. The select board seem to be as engaged in that throughout the charter as much as the planning board. This is like, it's listed in their leadership roles as focusing on this question of planning over a period of time and interacting with the planning board. They have a representative town meeting. They keep that number. It's a fairly large body of over a couple hundred town meeting members. They have, the town meeting is very similar to ours. Falmouth's charter is very similar to ours, other than some of the things that I'm pointing out, which I felt were different from ours. But there are a lot of similar attributes to how their town meeting functions and the role of the moderator. There were some things that the moderator, I noticed, in terms of the Finance Committee, he'll establishes Finance Committee members, and they're voted on by town meeting. So when town meeting convenes, this is presented to town meeting, and they serve for a year. And it's the clerk and the moderator that, if there's a vacancy, they confer and go through quite a bit of public notice. There's a lot of different references of how the clerk and the moderator are required to let the general public know about a vacancy on a board. There's quite a bit of reference to that throughout Falmouth's. And they do seem to have a flexibility here where they reference their town precincts, and that the Board of Selectmen will engage the clerk on any needed changes over a period of time. There doesn't seem to be any set language to that, but I thought that was interesting when it came to precincts and updating those precincts to be more efficient. Vacancies, again, if there's a vacancy at town meeting, it's filled similar to the town of Plymouth. If a certain period of time has passed, that the clerk makes the decision whether it should just go to the annual, or they can go back and look for someone who came in first or second in a race. So filling town meeting members seem to be something at the pleasure of the clerk. The Finance Committee, again, it was 15 members, and they were elected by town meeting as presented by the moderator. The Select Board, it's very clear throughout Falmouth's charter that the Select Board has a role of leadership, and it's very similar to Plymouth, where it's a strong town manager form of government. It's very clear in how the selectmen are to provide this leadership in terms of planning and other activities, but the day-to-day operations of the town are left to the town manager. I thought that was something that was similar to Plymouth. There wasn't any reference to the selectmen. There was one different thing, though, that the select board, if they have issues at different times with different departments, they are to work with the town manager. And it makes a lot of references as the board acting as a group when it comes to the town manager and how one interacts with the town manager. It goes on to talk about at length about the removal of the town manager. and it's a simple majority vote. Here in Plymouth, that's different. I think it's a supermajority, but there were provisions to that effect. They also talked about the different elected positions. The clerk is elected in the town along with the moderator. The other boards that oversee activities in the town, they get into the Housing Authority and how it's elected, but there wasn't terrible, it wasn't, very different from the town of Plymouth. But it does, again, just to reiterate the importance of Falmouth, they have very much different, even the town manager is required to come up and look at this plan that the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board have to come up with. The planning board, the town manager has to incorporate those activities. So when the selectmen do something and when the planning board does something relevant to planning, it is the job of the town manager to implement that. So there's, I thought that was a significant level of direction. I don't know if David, you were on the Board of Selectmen. Is that how things went in Plymouth? I couldn't, from my observations over the years, it was similar. How much of it? Okay. Again, it's, in Falmouth, it's very clear how the town manager is in control of the day-to-day activities. They hire everyone, they fire everyone, they do have to work through the regulations of the state in the personnel office, but the director of personnel does have to confer with these hirings and releases of different employees. And they had, so Falmouth was interesting in the sense that the difference I saw with Plymouth was there was quite a bit of reference to the planning process, and there was also a lot of reference to public notification to serve in these capacities. There's a lot of references in the charter that reference the requirement of the appointing body, such as anything that the planning board appoints or anything that the moderator appoints. And by the way, the moderator is conferring with the clerk quite a bit on these appointments. In the Board of Selectmen require an extensive notification for a period of time. And they're also required to put out to the residents, the Board of Selectmen, this planning process that they have. They have dedicated meetings for it and putting notice out to the town. But I did think that Falmouth had some, even though it's a strong town manager form of government, very similar to Plymouth, they seem to be emphasized in the charter calling for these activities around the planning process. And I was kind of interested in Falmouth because they're kind of in the same boat we are environmentally. So I thought that was interesting how that charter was focused on that element. But most of the other issues pertaining to the budget process and the school committee were very similar to Plymouth. That was Falmouth.
I just have a clarification. Betsy looked up on her computer, and she had about $255 million budget for Chelsea, but my good buddy Matt Tavares texted me, it's about $305 million, so I don't know if Betsy's information is a year or so old or not, but just wanted to let you know, it's $255 million plus.
Was this Chelsea? Chelsea. Yeah, I took it off the website.
All right, I reviewed the charters of Franklin, Newburyport, and Braintree. Franklin is a population of 31,635, which is about half the size of Plymouth. Their budget is 138,564,000, so it's about 138.5 is their budget. So the guy, what I kind of looked at it was, it's kind of it's a smaller town, more or less half the size of Plymouth, give or take. They use a town council and an administrator. They have 9 councilors that all are elected at large for a 2-year term with no compensation. It says, while a council member shall hold no other compensated town office or position. The council appoints the town administrator, who's the chief executive. He can't vote at any of the meetings, but he participates. They appoint the chairman and vice chairman of the council, a finance committee of 9 members, which prohibits any elected or appointed town employees, and any special studies committees is deemed as necessary. Their elections are in November of each odd-numbered year. They must meet at least once a month, and they can remove the town administrator by a majority vote, which is, like Billy said, which is different than us. You know, their charter wasn't as extensive as some of the other charters, you know, but it seemed to, you know, give them a good working knowledge. I'm kind of familiar with Franklin, and you know, I spend a lot of time up there doing some of my work stuff, and you know, I know some of the town people up there, and they seem to like what they have going on up there. And then I looked at Newburyport, and what I found interesting about Newburyport was that Newburyport is a city, and it's been a city for a long time, but it's small. It's 18,000 people. Their budget's 85 million, 85.1. They have a mayor and a city council. They have 11 councilors. Six are from wards and 5 are at large. The mayor is a 4-year term, no other city employment. The council sets his salary. And this is the one thing I found interesting, was the charter specifically prohibits anybody with a felony conviction from being mayor. I don't know if that's for a reason, or if but I just found that interesting in there. Their elections are also in November. And one of the really interesting and I think very productive parts of their charter was that they said that the mayor is going to call a joint meeting of the school committee and the city council to review the finances of the city before beginning the budget process. So, you know, in the charter it says, like, bring all the players together, let everybody know what the finances are like and what the pool of money is before you start, which seems to make sense. You know, that the pie is only so big, so let everybody know how much of the pie there is before they start that process. The other thing I liked about Newburyport was the city council shall annually provide for an outside audit by a CPA which has no personal interest, direct or indirect, in the fiscal affairs of the city or any of its officers. So the charter specifically sets out an independent audit of all the books and all the finances by somebody completely, you know, objective and neutral. And the other thing is, if you go online and look at their budget, they have a really nice flow chart, which sets out the whole city organization, the boards, the committees, and everything like that. And it you know, it just is a really nice presentation. You know what I mean? And the first thing is, it just sets the flow chart of all the offices and all the drop-down boxes. Everybody reports to everybody. And I thought that was really helpful for understanding, you know, not just the budget, but, you know, how all these people interact with each other. So, I mean, there might be something worth, you know, I could send to Michelle, she could print out and put it in everybody's packets, but it was a real nice budget. The last one was Braintree, population 37,120, budget 167.2. So, you know, give or take, again, about half the size of the town of Plymouth. Their charter is effective in 2005. It's a pretty good charter. It's a pretty comprehensive one. We looked at it during the last charter review committee. And there's a mayor and a town council. They have 9 councilors, 6 are from districts, 3 are at large. Mayor's a 4-year term. Council sets his salary. No councilor may hold any other town office or employment that receives a salary. The council appoints the auditor, the town clerk, the clerk of the council. They review all the appointments of the mayor, and they have a 2/30 majority override of any of the mayor's veto. So not only do they review all of his appointments, but that there's a veto process of anything that, you know, the mayor, the city council, the legislature sends to the mayor for his approval, but they can do an override by 2/3 majority of any of that. Their charter also sets out a nice thing where it says all appointments must be on merit and fitness, which I thought was really nice, because, you know, you hear a lot about the evil city forms of government and nepotism and cronyism and all that other stuff. But this one sets right out that everything's going to be on merit and fitness for that appointment. The other thing which we discussed on our last charter committee was, remember we talked about some of the general law references that we had to go through, and it referenced general laws that were no longer, I think Larry came in and talked to us about that during the last charter review committee. But this one says all references are to general laws in effect at the time. So that was one of, like I said, from the last charter review committee that kind of jumped out at me. No person shall hold more than one full-time office or employment, and any part-time employment shall not conflict with the full-time positions. And the other interesting thing about Braintree is they own their own electric company, and they have a 3-member elected board of the municipal light, I forget what it's called, municipal light something. And, referencing the last charter review committee, we had the mayor of Braintree came before us. And I actually bumped into him up at Gillette not that long ago. It was the current mayor, the past mayor, and Senator Keenan and stuff like that. And I bumped in, and I had a little conversation with them at Gillette, and I said, hey, I'm on the Charter Review Commission now. You guys talked to us last time. Would you be interested in coming back and talking to us again? And they did express interest in coming down and helping us yet again. They were very helpful last time. They were very, they provided a lot of guidance for us. David remembers. So that's what I looked at was the, and what I was surprised at was that it seemed to be with, these other people with a city or a council form of government are half the size of our town. And I haven't heard a bad thing about Newburyport. Newburyport's a really nice, very affluent town, and that's a city going way back. I forgot the exact charter, the date of the charter, but I was actually surprised at how long it had been a city. One of the and just a side note from my personal experiences, I wasn't around for most of August, and I was out in South Dakota for a week or so. And, I go out there every year, to ride motorcycles and stuff. And so we're riding through these little tiny, what I thought were towns. And you come up to and it'd say, the Hill City, population 400. You know what I mean? So it didn't really seem to matter, what the size was. And almost everything out there, whether it was a population of 200 or a population of whatever, were all city forms of government, which I kind of found interesting, because obviously, we were settled first, and as the west expansion, it seems that like everything around there, at least where I was in South Dakota, was a city form of government, even if it was 200 people. So that's just an interesting side note. So thank you.
Please make sure your microphone is turned on.
Thank you. There are a couple of other things in the Shrewsbury Charter that are relevant. First is residency. That seems to always come up when we have a charter debate. In Shrewsbury, a policeman and fireman must live within the town or within 15 miles of the town boundary. Also, the Shrewsbury Charter has a very elaborate couple of pages on how redistricting is done. Talks all about the committees, the timetables, the Board of Selectmen's responsibility. It's all spelled out, and it seems that it would have been nice to have something in our charter about that in the current redistricting that's going on. Well, that town has done it in a very elaborate way. You have to really study it because they go into the mathematics of how to calculate town meeting members for the new precincts and all the rest of it's all spelled out. Nothing left to chance. So, are there other charters? The next step, we're almost finished going through the charters, is to highlight those points that we don't want to forget. And Michelle is helping us do that. She's circulating back to us excerpts that have already been presented, and we're going to highlight them, give them back to her, and she collates them, and we'll end up with a long list of items to be included and discussed. I think, since we've done a lot of homework now on these various charters, if the commission agrees, it might be time to start thinking about who we might invite in over a series of meetings from outside towns, now that we know a lot about their charters, and ask them questions face to face. So I would invite members of the commission to suggest nominees for that assignment, then Michelle will invite them. And so I think between now and the next meeting, if you can get names of people you think should be invited. We've already heard from, I think, the mayor of Braintree during the Charter Review Committee. If you can hear him again if you want, but it'd be nice to get some fresh faces of some of these other towns. Is there any comment or agreement, David?
Agree, it's better to have them here in person, but like Betsy mentioned earlier, the Sharon League of Women Voters presentation was quite good, and they had 7 people, talking, about the strengths and weaknesses, but just basically about different forms of government. And it may be that if we can't get people in person, we should try to host, or perhaps in combination with League of Women Voters, but just...
We actually have the Zoom capability now, which would make it a lot easier.
Yeah, because it may be people, especially if they're from farther away, if we hear of a good idea, say in Amherst or Watertown or Williamstown or Pittsfield and Greenfield, Larry did, they may have a hardship traveling here, but they might be able to join us by Zoom.
Yeah.
Right.
And,
I think any invitation that goes out should include the option to, we craft something that says that you're available to be Zoomed into the meeting. That's a good idea. And I like Steve Trifoletti's idea of asking Mark Sylvia to come back.
Yeah.
And not only is he greatly familiar with the town after serving it in a number of capacities, but he's actually the moderator in the town of Fairhaven, so that would be someone. But I think that's a good idea to kind of, between now and next meeting, kind of think about who we want to invite to come in to talk about different forms of government.
Bill, say that again?
No, I agree. That's what we should do between now and the next meeting is think about people we want to be inviting in from different towns across the board.
Thank you. Betsy?
Yes, watching that League of Women Voters video today, what I think I heard the person from Sharon say was that he was on a charter commission that was, I think in 2010, that brought forward a change of government for Sharon, and it was defeated. But that they have since then been able to solve many of the problems that were part of that charter commission's attempt to solve through change of government. That without changing the government, they were able to make major strides. So I would love to hear him elaborate more on what he meant by solving, what were the problems and how did they solve them without changing their form of government.
Betsy,
I
who
thought
is it
that was a
you're
very
referring to?
interesting comment.
Betsy? Who is it you were referring to?
His name was Andrew. One of the problems with the League of Women Voters video is that they introduced them at the beginning, and then every once in a while, they flash their name on before you had time to write it down. But I believe he was maybe the town moderator.
He was sort of moderating the
Yeah.
Zoom thing. He was the former moderator, and Sharon, and now he
No,
moved.
that's not who I'm referring to.
Okay.
This man's name was Andrew, not the man who was moderating the
Yeah,
whole program,
okay.
but he kept, and I'll find out the name. I definitely will give you the name. I know his first name was Andrew, but I couldn't quickly get everybody's name down. Oh, yes, I do. Here it is. Webenzahl, Webenzahl.
We'll have it
And,
for, what's the next?
I was just really interested in hearing from him.
Good.
Because the town turned down, he said it was a 9-member charter, 7 members voted to bring a new charter, new form of government to town. 2 people said, no, we think we can solve all these problems you've brought up, we think we can solve them. I'm just quoting what I think Andrew said. I think we can solve them without changing our form of government. And he said, in fact, they were right. That's what we ended up doing. We ended up solving the problems that were presented by the Charter Commission but without changing our form of government. So I'd like to hear how they did that and what they meant, and I think that would be really interesting.
I think we've identified who it is on,
Yes, it's Andrew Webensall. He's from the town of Sharon, and I know he's serving in the government, but I don't remember
I
his,
think Mary found him.
maybe it was town moderator, maybe? I don't remember. Is that what he is, the town moderator? Okay.
Yep. Okay. So between now and the next meeting, please get names to Michelle for inviting to either come here or do it over Zoom. So let's take a change of course here, and now we can, let's listen to some public comment. Please limit your comment to 7 minutes, not including questions from the panel. So who would like to participate in public comment? Yes?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commission members. I'm Steve Bolleton. Based on public input, the Select Board has identified a series of policy goals that they're trying to achieve. These include making changes to encourage new business, such as streamlining the permit process with the goal of achieving a 30% commercial base, establishing fiscal changes to maximize services while reducing costs through efficiencies, creating funding mechanisms for public works, and conducting long-range planning to address issues such as land use, housing, and environmental concerns. This commission should be focused on creating a charter best designed to achieve those goals, because the form of government follows function. It is the function of town government to achieve the goals being set forth by the representatives elected by the people. And so the form of government should be the focus of what the town seeks to achieve. In recent history, town meeting has had some problems addressing some of these policy goals. We've heard how some businesses have chosen not to come to Plymouth because of its form of government and the time delay associated with addressing issues. We've heard from representatives that given the volume of information being presented to town meeting members and this number of sources of info that it has to go through, they have a difficulty actually digesting everything given the limited amount of time they have in order to reach such important decisions. And there's no question that residents have heard repeatedly that there have been additional expenses associated with delays in achieving certain public works projects. Now, at times during this process, various members of the commission have talked about the possibility of adding a town meeting or more in order to address some of these concerns, which sounded like a good idea, except Mr. Trifoletti, our town moderator, just last week said that that was a practical impossibility given the way town meeting functions. Nevertheless, some of our commission members have stated publicly that regardless of the information that they've received, they're going to still be pushing for just a change in town meeting. Ironically, some of these same members have even commented that's because this is the most democratic form of government that they can come up with. Now, I appreciate that people have their opinions, and they're certainly entitled to their opinions. But if this commission really wants to create the most democratic form of government, I suggest that the issue be put to a vote of the people. Present the voters with alternatives. One modified form of town meeting, one form of town council type government, smaller elected legislative body that meets more frequently but has the power to make certain decisions. I'm not proposing a mayoral system. The mayoral system here is used as a boogeyman to prevent change. It's been raised as a specter even just tonight. Anytime the word mayor is represented, the word indictment seems to be used in the same sentence. But our elected officials who spoke last week, Mr. Trifoletti, Mr. Muratori, Ms. Cavacco, all said that this seems to be the desire of the voters, to get options for their consideration and for debate. Certainly, no one is suggesting that there be something dictated to the people or that the people are trying to push something on this commission. Rather, The suggestion has been made that what people really want is to be presented options and the opportunity to hear the pros and cons of those options, much like this commission is doing in its opportunity to listen to various people and come up with ideas taken from various forms of government. Now, I understand that the idea of creating alternatives will require more work of this commission. But this is a decision that will affect the town for decades. So the difficulty of the task shouldn't be the deciding factor. I ask that the commission members who are in opposition to an alternative reconsider. It's not bullying, it's not a demand, it's a request. Please give the people a choice. Thank you.
Okay. Any comments? Mr. Pfizer?
I'm not sure exactly how long you've been in Plymouth, and you repeat...
Mr. Pizer, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but first of all, it's not about me.
No, I...
Secondly,
me,
this was,
Mr. Pizer has the
this was
floor right
actually
now.
this is an ad hominem attack that was made on me
He
the
hasn't
first
even
time I
finished the
spoke.
sentence.
Well,
Let him speak.
Then let me answer your question. 15 years.
Okay. You brought up two instances where businesses didn't come to Plymouth because of town meeting. I did some research on the subject, and the reasons that they didn't come was the height exclusion. Is that a failure of town meeting in your view?
Mr. Pizer, I'm not speaking of one or two examples. I'm speaking of a general perception in businesses outside of Plymouth. And I've spoken to dozens of businesses who had the opportunity to come here and chose not to because of various problems with the permitting process. Now, I'm not saying, again, specifically that we're trying to change the form of town government to address one or two particular issues. I merely gave that as one example of one of the shortcomings that has been cited regarding town meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cost.
That's it.
Yes, one of the things that I have repeatedly done was ask people to give us in writing information. Would you please give us the name of some of the businesses, maybe 10 or so, that you have contacted that have told you they didn't come here because of serious problems? Could you give us that
I'm
list?
afraid I can't do that. I've spoken to businesses confidentially because businesses do business here in town. And they
So you don't have any particular, you can't quote any particular business. I understand that. So it's just sort of, we want to hear that they're out there and that you know them, but we don't know them. That's what we get to work with. Secondly, I have been looking at the mayor and council and town meeting form of government since I was elected as a commissioner. And one thing I did, and I'm the person who mentioned Chelsea tonight because Mr. Malaguti was one of his chosen towns, and of course I did have a relative working there. But I decided just, out of interest, and I recommend that everyone do this, by the way. I Googled mayor arrested, mayor indicted, mayor jailed. And you'd be surprised at the hundreds of websites that you get when you put that in. I put in town meeting member indicted, town meeting member arrested, town meeting member jailed. I didn't get very many, maybe one, and he was from Plymouth, and it had nothing to do with government. So I looked at city councilor arrested, indicted. So I recommend that you do that rather than just throw out some people are talking about mayors are indicted. If you do the research, I think you'll be shocked. Thank you.
Well, if I may respond to that, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments? I have to make one comment, which is you seem to be pushing again this idea of putting two charters on the ballot so that people have a choice. Do you understand how the statute works? The statute is not kind to that particular process.
Nor is it
spent
exclusive of that
in
process, though,
1990,
sir.
town of Plymouth did exactly what you're suggesting. And it wasted years of effort. If that, I don't know whether that was a one-year charter effort or a two-year charter effort, but neither charter got a majority. It went down the tube, and the selectmen threw up their hands and had to go to the state legislature and ask them by special act to give the Plymouth a form of government. I mean, that's just the way that's the way the state statute works.
I understand how the statute
So
works.
you want us to spend 2 years and then come up with that particular process and then have the whole thing come for naught? And we wasted 2 years of time up here?
I would suggest, sir, that what occurred 40 years ago is...
It's the same, it's the same way the statute works.
It's not necessary, but it's not a
people are gonna
guarantee that it will occur. Nor does it mean that this commission need to create a form that insists that that there be nothing. As in, if it can be written so that if neither charter proposed gets majority vote, the remaining charter, the existing charter stays in place. That can be done. So you're not absent a form of government.
But we wasted 2 years of effort. You know, back in 1990, which was the charter that ran into trouble and it couldn't get a vote on either one, a majority. And 10 years later, the town tried it again. And that was the Charter Commission that Albert Thompson was on. Dr. Meltzer, I was on it. And the very first thing we did was to review what happened 10 years previous. And what a total waste of time, total botched effort. And we pledged to each other in the 1999 Charter Commission that we would support strongly a charter that would be the best for the Plymouth because of what had happened 10 years previous. Yes.
I'd just like to make a comment. It bothers me that this is the second time that someone's come up with public comment and said this. And people have come up and said different things. The commission has not reacted to anything else like this. And it just bothers me that what we should say is, okay, we'll take that under advisement. It just, you know, here's an individual who took the time out of his night to come up and talk to us, and he's saying that, you know, he's gotten a bunch of opinions, and this is what he's saying. And it just, we're supposed to be listening, and now, okay, I get it, that it's difficult, and I think everybody who comes up and says this gets that it's difficult. But I just, it bothers me that this is the one thing that we continually, as a commission, say, well, you know, we're not going to do that because it's difficult. It's just, public comment should be public comment.
Yeah, and if I can add, I think it is less difficult in this 30 years later, in this day and age when we have access to other town charters and even the ability to find attractive language in many charters. I don't think it would be as hard to create a second choice for the public through building the best ideas we see in other charters. So I personally remain in favor of providing choice, and we've been told from the attorney at the very beginning and multiple times that the statute allows it if this commission votes it. And it's ultimately up to the commission, but I personally will continue to hope that we give the people of Plymouth a choice, because I don't think it will be as hard to put together that choice as it was 30 years ago.
Further comment?
I want to go on record to echo, it won't take a long time, but I do believe that, you know, we were all elected, like Larry said, people knew our beliefs and all that, and all that. But I believe that, you know, that with the low turnout in any election that we have, we were elected by 12 to 14% of the population of Plymouth. There you go. So the majority of the people of the town of Plymouth actually do not participate in the election process, and that's one of the things that we've repeatedly talked about in our charge. And high turnout is usually driven by issues. And this is obviously a hot button issue as we have public comment every night. We have, you know, people calling in on Zoom. We have all this. This is, you know, our work is a hot button issue within the town of Plymouth. So I believe that, you know, we talk a lot about getting the rest of the town to vote, that other 85 to 87% of the people that participate. This is one of those times where a large majority of the people will participate if given an option and given multiple choices. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comment? Okay.
Thank you, members.
Other public comment? Yes, sir. Who next?
Good
Yes,
evening.
go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Gail Butler, and I've been a resident of Plymouth now for 12 years, not including the 10 years I spent here during the summers at Manamet Point. I was even here when the Mayflower was here, the hotel, for those of you who go back far enough. I serve on the Advisory and Finance Committee and the Capital Improvement Committee. I've been to all but one of your meetings. I've listened to what you've all said, and I've listened to the many speakers and what they have said. And then I've listened to your comments. And I've read the candidate's statement you provided to the Old Colony Memorial. I have to admit that I'm troubled by some of what has been said and written. I will share some examples through my talk of written articles and spoken topics by the committee members. Example 1, and I'm quoting people, "There is a key advantage in our present government. So many citizens are involved. Some 500 volunteers are deciding how this town should be developed." My comment is, I ask, does a town the size of Plymouth really want 500 volunteers running it? There was a statement made that no one in Plymouth is qualified to be a mayor. I ask, how do all those other cities find qualified people? There was another statement made that the cities who have mayors are corrupt. I lived in a city with 45,000 people that had a mayor. I saw things there that I see here, but I also saw that with a mayoral government, there was someone in charge, and if there was a problem, there was someone knowledgeable to go to and who was accountable for results. A written comment. Our government must serve the community needs in order to keep up with the times, and our town government needs to be more efficient in the process of meeting the responsibilities of a growing community. This effort will control costs and improve services. I would ask, how do we do that when a major segment of our government only meets twice a year? A written comment. If elected, I would listen to all concerns. We need as much citizen input as possible. But I will state for the record that I am in favor of our present form of government. And so when I do continue to support this antiquated, obsolete, inefficient, non-transparent government, easy answer, it's the most representative form of government we could have. I would say, if a representative form of government gives you antiquated, obsolete, ineffective, and non-transparent government, why would anyone vote for this? Never mind being in favor of it again. Written comment. I'm not saying that everyone who signed the charter petition looks like the guy in the buffalo hat that broke into the Capitol. For the most part, the people who signed that petition did so because they are dissatisfied with the effectiveness of the local government. Yes, hold our elected appointed officials accountable. You could easily accomplish that just by turning out at the polls. My answer, well, we know that too few residents turn out to vote, so I guess we are stuck with an ineffective local government. Written comment, I will bring positive leadership to the committee. What is positive leadership? It's having the optimistic vision of the future. It's doing thorough research on each issue that arises. It's reaching out to residents to listen to their ideas and concerns. I would say being optimistic is very good. Doing research is very important. Talking with residents is essential. But doing the same old thing over and over again is not going to lower taxes or help conservation or environmental. Written comment. During the last Charter Review Committee, we sought out the community participation and input, which was the foundation of our review. Having current and past local elected leaders and stakeholders within the community provide us with the guidance on what direction they wanted us to pursue relative to the current town charter, shaped our approach, and then we went through the charter line by line in a meticulous process to determine where change was needed. I would say if you are looking to make a change, Do not go to the current and past leaders and stakeholders to get guidance on what direction they want you to pursue. It's my understanding that the Charter Review Committee can only make modifications and adjustments within the current government framework. A Charter Review Committee cannot change the form of government itself. Only a Charter Commission can do that. There is a difference between committee and commission. Written comment. The Boston Globe reported major contributions to mayoral candidates in Boston came from developers. Fall River's mayor doled out marijuana shop licenses and allegedly kept thousands of dollars. My comment, are we really comparing places like Boston and Fall River and saying if you have a mayoral government, this is what you will be like? And are you saying that all towns and cities with a mayoral government have this problem? And that our multiple-person select board and sizable town meeting make such corruption very difficult? Really? So in closing, I would ask that your goal would be to produce an outline of a number of alternative government structures, complete with pros and cons of each as you see them, and then let the voters decide. Give the people a choice. Allow me to thank you for your time and effort on behalf of the town of Plymouth. I will be taking no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
I'd
comments?
just like to say that I thought that was a very articulate and well-thought-out public comment, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. Prior to making my statement, I'd like to inform you I'm not here to bully anyone. I doubt that an octogenarian closer to 90 than to 80 is capable of doing that to any of you. Why are we here this evening? It's because the citizens of Plymouth that cared enough to vote and were not happy with the most recent charter review that merely tweaked a few words of a town charter, got
me,
up
could you
and
tell us-
actually voted for
Tell
you
us
to form the commission.
Your name,
Yes.
please? Your name?
Oh, Gene Weiner, resident of Plymouth, 11 and a half years.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You were not elected to improve any particular function of Plymouth's government, but to look at the total government and find improvements therefore, if any. You were not elected to use any, solidify any predetermined opinion. You were elected to study others. You are to be commended on studying the structure of so many other towns in town. That's important. We're here because Plymouth has grown rapidly during recent years and has confronted a myriad of expensive problems that needed immediate attention, such as the broken sewer line, expensive repairs of public buildings, the fire headquarters situation, and so forth, which has resulted in exploded property taxes over the past 10 years. Mine have almost doubled since I've arrived. The result has been a burgeoning budget without oversight, with rapidly increasing unfunded liabilities for our town, with no overall plan for future funding of an ever-increasing demand for town services and security that will arise from the forecasted growth to a town of 80 to 100,000 people. That's a serious challenge. It would seem to me that this commission, besides looking at the structure of other towns, should list the current and projected 21st century challenges we face, alongside with their probable causes and solutions. It would seem to me that this commission would want to remove any 17th century governing procedural anchors that prevent progress while preserving our heritage so that Plymouth can move forward with a more efficient form of government in order to survive and to thrive. It would seem to me that in addition to studying the structures of the selected towns, that the commission should investigate why those towns that changed their form of government away from town meeting in the past decade or so did so, and what the results have been. what was good, what was bad, how would it affect us. It would seem to me that a town with 60,000 to 100,000 residents in the near future needs a legislative governing body that meets more than 2 or 3 times a year to deal with the challenges that will inevitably arise. It would seem to me that with a full year remaining for a preliminary report in September of 2022, that there is sufficient time for this commission to develop and offer the citizens of Plymouth several charter options of modification, change, or whatever is necessary to protect, enhance, and ensure our town's future. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Thank you very much for your comments, sir. Yes?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Charter Commission. First, I'd like to thank you for the work that you're doing. I know it's a lot of work. I know local government very well. I want to introduce myself. My name is Al Donardo. I moved here a year ago from Saugus. I live at 46 Sunflower Way. While I was in Saugus, I was a lifetime resident, born and raised there. I know North Shore politics very well. And I'm the new guy in town. I'm really learning what's going on. But I did serve as elected town meeting member in Saugus for 30 years. I had to resign that post last year, obviously to move here. I served on various boards and commissions. I was the president of our local cable access station. I was not on the commission, but Saugus did have a charter commission back in 2009. I was active in that. And I know many of you have mentioned the Collins Center over at UMass. The late Ed Collins was our town manager as I was a town meeting member in the mid-1990s. And they named the Collins Center for Local Government after him. I come to you here tonight, as I had said over 10 years ago at public comment in Saugus, was as we wait on perfect government to come when Christ returns, we're here to work and carve out, and as we work to carve out this authority that we have and how we're going to carve this up. And I learned a lot serving in Saugus for 30 years. I learned the virtues of town meeting. I am surprised by some things here in Plymouth. First of all, Saugus has the lowest taxes in the state when combined with water rates. And we did that because of our commercial base. I understand you're talking about the shift. We conducted that shift, which gave us the max over to the commercial rate, and we had the lowest taxes. Peabody was always the lowest without water rates because of the Mayor to Region had led that. They had a big industrial park there. A couple things I've noticed is your town meetings. I know it's on a Saturday. You seem to be rushed on a Saturday. What we had experienced in Saugus was we would meet the first Monday of May, and we would meet every Monday until we were finished with the warrant. Sometimes that would go up till the end of June, could be done in 3 nights. It depended on what went on and how things moved along. I heard people comment about the anger of voters in Plymouth. Well, there are angry voters on the North Shore as well. It's just not Plymouth. We were getting that as well. The voters cannot really voice too much to Beacon Hill, so you're going to hear it locally. That's always been my opinion, and that happens everywhere. A couple things. I know you were talking about reconsideration at town meeting. What we would do with that is it would be within 30 minutes on the prevailing side to reconsider an article. And that would carry over to the next meeting. So if the meeting was over in 5 minutes, you would have 25 minutes at the next meeting. If there was an article, you would have to show up at the next meeting, make sure that somebody didn't vote to reconsider that. I always thought that worked very well, because on the rare occasion, we reconsidered articles, but you had 30 minutes to do it, and that did happen on occasion. The special town meetings, and I don't know if Plymouth's not aware of it, I've heard some murmurings of it, and this notion that town meeting is cumbersome. And it's cumbersome for a reason, because I don't believe this town meeting realizes the authority it has. It has a lot of authority. You can call a special town meeting. I don't know, we did that in Saugus many times. I called a special town meeting for 3 articles for the local cable. I didn't get, now by Mass General laws, you get 200 signatures, the Board of Selectmen has to call that within 45 days at the most. It has to be at least 2 weeks, because you have to serve notice. That goes back to the old farming days where people would come into town, they'd see the warrant there. Obviously, serving notice is much more quicker today, but we still have to wait 2 weeks. There were many times I called a special town meeting. We got to a point in Saugus that the Board of Selectmen would not even require the signatures. They would do it as a courtesy. When I had those 3 articles 2 years ago, I just went to the Board of Selectmen meeting. We call them Selectmen in Saugus. You call them Select Board here. But they would put that on as a courtesy, and a town meeting was called 3 weeks later. Let's see. Resolutions. I know there was some debate, and I heard your moderator talking about resolutions. I'm familiar with resolutions. Years ago, resolutions are important for the body, because town meeting, the legislature should be able to speak about something. That is the mind of town meeting. We did that in Saugus when our library was going to be closed. We had a resolution come off the floor of town meeting instructing the Finance Committee to find the funding for the library. Well, they could ignore that, but they also knew the next move is we had the authority to move X amount of dollars out of one budget to another. We didn't have to do that. They knew the authority and the so-called threat, so to speak. We wouldn't do that, but they knew it was there. That has changed because of Mass General law. You cannot have resolutions off the floor because of open meeting laws. People need to be served notice that that article is on the warrant, but now resolutions can be within the warrant article. It's a serving notice issue, that that person knows we're having a meeting on that. So I know you were talking about resolutions. In Saugus, the moderator, I know your moderator is elected town-wide, we did have, I'm a former town meeting, but we had 50 members, 10 precincts, 5 from each precinct. We are a town with a town form of government. Our moderator was elected by the body. There were times we had a moderator that ran amok, that thought that he was a Speaker of the House. I'm not saying that's happening here, but we had it. There was a threat that he could be ousted by our body. He later was. A new moderator was put in. Sometimes the voters really don't know what's going on in town meeting. We knew that. So that was important. I know you talk about, Lynn and these other communities. I've lived around it. Saugus is notched between these communities. And for over 30 years, we were trying to keep the barbarians out of zoning. These are your issues, and I can see it across the horizon, coming down from Boston, just like I did, escaping that, coming down here to the other side to Tahiti.
You could
I'll wrap it up.
take about a minute. Right.
But my point is, what's on the horizon coming down here? And I saw it in Saugus, and I just felt that for someone like myself that is a layman, that it was much easier for myself and others to grab those levers of government when it ran amok. So I'm not saying, I'm just saying I find it better to keep it as close to the people as best and tweak what we have. So I'll leave you with that. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Bernardo?
I just have a question. So you say you recently moved here. Are you a town meeting member down here yet? Or?
No.
After that talk, I would hope, what precinct?
Precinct 12.
12? Well, I can't help you, but I would hope that you would look for the signatures, and you seem very informed, and you could be an asset to the process
We'll
down
see.
here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, public comment, right.
Yes, I'm Pompey
Delafield.
Delafield, Precinct 12, Town Meeting Member. Been a resident, official resident of Plymouth only for about 5 years, but I've been coming here all my life and feel a great deal of knowledge about Plymouth. So I just want to keep it very general. First of all, I want you to know I was what they call a supervisor of the town of Hyde Park in New York State, which is a town of about 22,000. So I do understand a little bit about forms of government. And I want to stress one thing. We had a very different form of government. It was no better. We should be very proud of the government. When I came here and I became a town meeting member, I said, wow, this is really great. And it is really representative of the type of government that I wanted to live in. If you look at how big the town of Plymouth is, the number of communities within the town of Plymouth, it is important for every one of those communities to have representation. It is very dangerous, in my mind, to put too much power in the hands of too few people. And I ask you to really consider that in everything you do in the charter. It is very dangerous. I know we've talked about corruption of mayors and stuff like that. That's not what, that's just the surface of the worst of it. But the fact is, you need to have the representation from all elements. Yes, there are some people in the town meeting who are well-equipped to do it, and some of them who are just following along. That's natural. I saw that on a board of 5 people. Some of them were well-versed and knew what they were talking about, and others were followers. So it doesn't matter how many people you are, you're going to have that diversity. I would also like to stress that I was very impressed with what Betsy Hall said. It is not the type of government. It is solving the problems within the type of government that you have. And we have a good type of government. Let's not throw it out. Then we would have to start all over again solving the problems. Let's get down to solving the problems as opposed to changing the form of government. The last thing I would like to say has to do with the choice. Look at you and how many hours you have spent. You people know. The voters won't know. They won't have put in that number of hours. It is your responsibility to come to the town with what you think is the best form of government. Choice is not the way. You give a dozen choices to the town, and the town does not know how to answer those choices because they haven't done the research that you've done. So I ask you, please come up with one charter and offer us the choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Thank you, Mr. Delafield. Ed Russell.
Good evening, everyone. Ed Russell I'm a town meeting rep from Precinct 12. I came here tonight because of the issue du jour, which is the number of alternatives to be presented to the voters. And I disagree with doing more than one. I came with great minds think alike, because I came with the example of the 1990 Commission's failure to do anything and the wasted time that they'd done. And yes, you can poo-poo it, it still exists, it is possible. So don't dismiss that possibility that if you present two, there may be trouble. And I heard, well, we need to have 2 or 3 choices. You can't have 3 choices. That if you're trying to meet a 50% minimum, and you have 3 choices, you're bound to fail because it's going to dilute all of the choices. So that's off the table. I also feel that you were all elected for various reasons. Most were well-known and respected members of the community. That's very powerful. Some came with the knowledge by the voters that you had an opinion one way or the other. That's fine. That's also good. And you can't dismiss the fact that you've got to issue an opinion because people voted for you for those reasons that I mentioned, and they're looking for your opinion. Are you going to put forward something that isn't your opinion or isn't your belief? I don't think that's right. So, and I do think the town meeting form of government needs to be improved. It needed to be improved 10 years ago. It will need to be improved 10 years from now. And I read a lot of the comments, complaints that we need to do this and that. I said, wow, I agree. Let's do that. That can be done not necessarily by a change of government but in the town meeting form. So with that, I want to also thank you, as others have. This is a hard job you have, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you. And okay, we have Michelle, is there somebody? Go ahead on Zoom.
Ms. Cavaco, can you hear us?
Okay, we get the audios. You're welcome to speak as soon as the audio is, as soon as we can hear you. Other public comment? Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Kevin Lynch, Precinct 13. First, let me start this so I don't go over my time limit. First, is it possible for you folks to state when you are going to be submitting a report to the public so they can look at what you are coming to the conclusion for? In other words, we started in June, this past June, 2021, and my question is, when are you folks going to go and
By the
submit a...
statute 43B, we deliver a preliminary draft of the charter 12 months from when we...
Okay, that's
So
beautiful.
it's going to be actually, it'll be next September 2022 when the preliminary draft is due.
All right, let me just go and circle that. This is the report that you're talking about that you will submit. Okay. My next thought is that, well, so that's 16 months. All right? So my thought would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Would it be possible for you folks to submit a quarterly report so that the citizens can understand kind of what you've been viewing, hearing, et cetera? I appreciate the attention that some people, I'd say about 75% of you are paying attention. The other 25% are just writing. But could I ask you, would it be possible for you folks to submit a quarterly report? And the answer would be crickets. Okay. Next, I have something here.
Before I answer that, I want to know if I'm in the 25% or the 75%.
You are in the 75%, and I thank you so much, sir, for injecting the human element into this. This is how I teach class. I call people out for not paying attention, for looking at their computers or the cell phones, and I say, what are you doing, ladies and gentlemen? All right, leave it alone. Now, so no quarterly report. I guess that's not something that the citizens of Plymouth perhaps could be interested in, but I do believe they would be. Next, I have here an 11 by 17 inch piece of paper, and I really crunched the numbers, and I found out that approximately 12.5% is 1/8 of this piece of paper. Now, you have a huge, huge responsibility to be able to generate the interest of, oops, this is the entire population of Plymouth at 65,000. This is half. This is a quarter. This is 1/8. This is the amount of people who voted in the last election, or probably even less than that. So how are you going to go, and as you sit there, say, and look at your computer, and go and say, oh, yeah, as the person continues to look at the computer and says, up yours, Mr. Lynch. So that's how I go and I handle the students in my class. This is the population of Plymouth. This is approximately the number, the percentage of Plymouth that votes. I cannot believe the arrogance of people that continue to do what they're doing, but that's okay. That's human nature. So, all right, I throw that out to you. And last, I have about 2 more minutes, according to the 7-minute time limit. I don't know. I would love to be able to, my email, you folks might want to be able to write it down, KF Lynch, that's Kevin Francis Lynch, at yahoo.com. Would love to be able to hear your critique of my plan that I submitted to this young lady right here, that's entered into the record of the, it's a critique of a citizen-submitted potential plan of Plymouth Town government. Haven't heard boo. The last thing I'm going to say is this, is that I really wish that you folks, I've heard, and you know what? I appreciate the gentleman, boom, boom, that came up here and really, really, touted the positivity of the Plymouth town meeting form of government. Would you please submit a report on paper, put it into your particular town website of both the positive aspects of town meeting, but also be very, very, dare I say, balanced and submit the negative aspects of it. So I leave that alone, and I'm still, like I said, waiting for your critique from what I submitted. I think it was on the second meeting. I don't think it was the third. I think it was the second meeting that, you know, I really wish that you folks would go and 15 seconds, and thank you very much. Mr. Malaguti, as I used to say, chalk one up for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Any questions or comments? Okay. Other public comment? Mr. Hutchinson?
Joe Hutchinson, Precinct 12 Town Meeting Member. I wanted to just talk very quickly about the importance of accuracy and evidence, and point out also that it's easy to make mistakes. You know, I listened to Commissioner Hall quote some numbers and then go back and look them up and make sure that she was accurate, and I think that's great because it's easy to make mistakes with both numbers and with other kinds of measurements. And I think, don't get me wrong, I think anecdotes are important. I think conversations that you have with others and opinions of others are interesting to report on. But the reason that I came up here tonight is to actually commend Commissioner Hall for asking people to write down assertions and provide evidence in terms of names or numbers or whatever measurement is appropriate, and doing that consistently. You know, and that, what happens when you do that is you write it down, and we can prove that what you said is true. And I can't emphasize how important that is. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Going on with public comment on Zoom. Ms. Cavaco, do you wish to make public comment?
Yes. Is that better? Can you hear me better now?
Yes, I think we hear you.
Great. So one of the questions well, first, my name is Betty Cavaco, and I've been a resident for about 55 years. So, but listening to everybody's comments, and I do appreciate all the work that you folks are doing, but I'm not usually one that likes to pussyfoot around a subject, so I'm just going to get right to the point. I'd like to know, will this commission offer choices on the ballot so the residents can vote on it? I think, you know, we've heard a couple that say yes, we've heard a couple say no. I mean, is this something that this commission would be willing to vote on so we can, I think it would save a lot of time. It'd save a lot of people in public comment asking, you know, or begging for options for our residents. And that's really the question I'd like to know, is that, are we going to provide our residents an option, whether it's one, whether it's two? I'd just like to know where this is all headed.
Anybody, before I answer her, does anybody have a comment or a question? Larry.
Betty, I think that the answer to it's premature for us to be saying that. This commission has been gathering information, as we said we were planning to do. When we gather the information, one of the steps that we're going to take, and I'm suspecting in the not terribly distant future, once we have a little bit more information, we're inviting people in, then we're going to, you know, we haven't made a commitment in any direction at this point. And, you know, having not made a commitment in any direction, we certainly haven't made a commitment on the subject of choice.
May I respond?
Pardon me?
I said, may I respond?
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Well, not making a commitment to, where you're headed with all your research, but making a commitment to the residents as to what an option or what more than one option would be, I believe is two different things. I think your job would be easier if, while you're doing your work, to say, you know what, we're going to give a couple options, and that way you don't have to focus on only one thing. And I don't think it's premature at all. I think people should know exactly how this whole thing is going to go. Like I said, I appreciate all your research. I know, I know that it's going to take a long time, and I'm hoping that, your committee or commission will take all these suggestions for residents to have a choice. And I believe that it would be fruitful if the committee actually took a vote to do so.
Betty, we've said this repeatedly from day one, all options remain on the table. Nothing has been taken off the table. Everything is still there. We're still in an information gathering mode. We will be probably for another few months. Preliminary draft is due a year from now. I think it would actually be a mistake if we started to try to say we're going to have any new charter at all. I mean, we don't even know that. There may be anywhere from 0 to more charters, but we're still doing the work and keeping every option on the table, whether it's a council, town meeting, or a mayor.
Well, I would hope that there would be a little bit better direction, seeing that 78% of our voters actually voted for change, but I really appreciate you allowing me to speak. Thank you.
Other comments?
Yeah, I would just reinforce what Larry said,
I can't hear you, David.
Yeah, I'd reinforce what Larry said. It's on. The green light's there. That it's premature. I mean, we have, several months of listening, learning, talking among ourselves, and depending on our sort of initial sorting, we may creep toward unanimity and not need something. We don't know that yet. So I think that bridge, the river and the bridge is still far ahead of us for making any kind of decision. As we know, we're allowed by statute. The minority is allowed to put in their report when things settle out, but we're still months away. So,
Very good.
yeah.
Any other comment? Betty, do you have anything more you want to add? All right. Thank you very much for your comments. Is there any more public comment? Hearing none, we will turn to the next item on the agenda, which is the minutes, which were in the package for
Bill,
September 13th.
Excuse me, Mr. Abbott, could I say a couple of things before we go into the minutes? One, I would like to have the public reminded about our webpage, because our minutes are on the webpage, so people can review our minutes at any time. But perhaps not everyone in our listening audience knows how to access our webpage, so perhaps someone could review that.
Yes, the webpage is there. There are several, probably a dozen different categories, everything from minutes of past meetings. They're actually under Charter Commission. They're not on the dashboard on the left. They're actually part of the Charter Commission. It says minutes and agendas. But on the in the webpage itself are all the documents that we've been furnished from citizens, statements, charters of other towns, working documents. There's quite a lot of material there, and some are just resource documents on writing charters. There's a list of them, and you'll find a lot of what we're doing if you want to know what the charter's been up to for the past 3 months.
So, Bill, would you actually tell people what do they turn on their computer, then what do they
No,
do
you
next?
just turn on the computer, go to the town of Plymouth, and then go down under departments, and you'll come to Charter Commission. It's alphabetical. And click on Charter Commission, and then that pops the menu for all the different articles and agenda items under Charter Commission, and you can find then in any one of them all these various documents we're talking about.
Thank you so much. Now, also, could I ask Mr. Vecchi a question? Because I didn't get a chance to ask him about Braintree, that question that I had. Could I ask him before we go to the minutes?
What's your question?
Braintree has a budget of $571,000 and 968, so approximately $572,000 for their mayor and city council. Do you know, do they also have a town administrator on top of that, like Fall River, or do they have no town administrator?
I'm only getting part of your sentence. If you can ask it again, please.
Off the top of my head, I don't have that answer for you. I can take a quick look.
I just wondered if Braintree has a town administrator as well as a mayor. I had researched Fall River, and they have both. They have a mayor, a city council form of government, but on top of that, they also have a town administrator. So I wondered if Braintree has that.
I think almost all of them do. Like I said, I could look through the charter again, but off the top of my head, I couldn't answer the question, but I'm pretty sure they do.
Okay, because I couldn't find it in the budget. The budget lists almost $600,000 just for the mayor and city council for a cost. But I couldn't see, looking at their budget, what their cost was for town administrator and support for the town administrator. So I just didn't know. I just couldn't find it. So perhaps Mr. Vecchi and I will both research that and see if we can find that out. Thank you.
Are we ready to ask if there are any additions or corrections? Are we ready to do the minutes of the meeting of September 13th?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
At the risk of being nitpicky,
It's your job.
then again, there I am. Matthew Moratori has one T, and I believe that's how he uses Matt. So
I
you
would,
could
I
stop-
would amend my motion to approve the minutes with the correction.
You could say nitpicky correction, but thank you.
I second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the minutes as corrected by Mr. Pizer. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Minutes have been approved. Turn to new business. Hearing none, we now will go to old business. Okay, the last item I just want to discuss is the next meetings, the meeting dates. And Michelle, correct me if I misspeak any of these, but I believe our next meeting is Monday, October 4th. Right, now that's also, I want to discuss it with the members, that's also the night of the moderator's presentation forum, which will probably be televised. No doubt it'll be on Zoom, but if we met that night, then we would not be actively live televised. It would have to be taped and shown later. It's hard coming up with meeting dates in the run-up to town meeting because so many dates are taken up by the Finance Committee. So that week, the
or
only
the
date we had
caucuses.
available was actually October 4th.
Yeah, caucus is going to start as well.
We in favor of meeting on October 4th? Any objections?
I'm okay with it. I thought at one point, after town meeting, we would go to Thursdays again, but I see you have some
Yeah, this is-
Mondays in November.
Well, this is still coming up towards town meeting. But anyways, the first date is October 4th, so that'll be our next meeting date.
That will not be PAC live Zoom meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, PAC TV will record us, but for playing later. Right. And then the next date, Michelle, is on my right, is it October 28th?
I think we just discussed October 25th.
25th. What day of the week is that?
That's Monday.
Monday?
Yes.
Okay.
So what are we
Don't
talking?
look at the chart. We've been talking about this all week.
Okay.
So, Michelle, what is the next date
We're
after
going to
October
do
4th?
October 4th and
Yep.
October 25th. I
25th?
mean, you can change it to the Thursday, but then in November, you have November 4th.
Well, let's just do these one at a time. The
Okay.
date would either be October 25th, which is a Monday, or October 28th, a Thursday. Is there any preference? No?
I'm going to be out of town on the 25th, but back by the 28th.
And I will be away for about 2 weeks, end of October and the first week in November. So
So
I'd be missing 2 meetings, depending on when your November meeting is.
Michelle, the 28th, that's not a precinct chairs night, right? Or is it?
No,
Yeah.
the 21st is a precinct chairs night.
Yeah.
What we were discussing is that the 28th is close. If you go on the Thursday, the 28th, it's close to the November 4th
It's a
meeting.
week away instead of 2 weeks.
So that's,
So,
it's a back-to-back week
So-
again.
So Monday, November 1, or Thursday, November 4th, is that what we're talking about?
No.
I mean, on the agenda, it says Monday, November 1.
Right, but that
No.
is all subject to change. That was what I thought we were going to do. And then we,
so the only
November 4th is
question, before we get to November, is this week in October. If we did it on the 25th, that would be a Monday. And then we would have a week before the next one on Monday, November 1st, which gives us a week in between. So maybe the better date there then would be October 25th, which is a Monday.
I'm good with that.
Okay, October 25th, Monday, and then
Yeah.
followed by Monday, November 1st, and then Monday, November 15th. Right, Michelle?
it was going to be the 4th and the 15th of November, but we could do Monday, November 1st. That's fine.
November 1st and 15th.
The 1st in November?
Yeah, that's a Monday.
Okay.
All right, so basically, they're correct as on the agenda, except that
It's town
the
meeting.
one change is the 28th is going to be the 25th
16th.
of October.
Bill.
Got it?
Bill. I just got a little lost in those dates when I was trying to write them in my calendar book. Can you just,
October 4 and 25,
4 and 25, okay.
November 1 and 15.
So it's October 4th, October 25th, November 1st, November 15th. All right, done.
So I just want to revisit October 4th. The presentation forum, I've never missed one because I find them so helpful. And if town meeting is the 16th, then I would be happy, if everybody else would be happy, to do the 18th of October and not try to do not try to do October 4th on the presentation forum at the same time.
Yeah,
But if I have to
that
miss
means
it,
you would be
I will be
meeting again.
here if it's the 4th, but I prefer to be at the presentation forum. So if we could find another date.
Betsy, you could actually do both. I mean, you can watch the presentation forum. I'm sure they're going to have it repeated.
Yeah, I
in
just like to
state. It was
participate.
just that we didn't want to have these meetings too close together.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, all right. But I do like to ask questions.
If you
Okay,
give
well,
the
thank
meeting-
you. I-
The 28th of October is very close to
I will be
November
here
1st.
on the 4th.
Okay. So, October 4th is our next meeting, followed by the 25th of October. Any other questions? Then a motion is in order to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.